my reflection. I need you to guide me home. Rain is pouring down the rooftops, hiding secrets all around. Don't know which way to turn to. I need you to guide me home.
And we're live, so
Oh boy.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Generation Orange. I'm your host, Mark Segovia, alongside my co-host Sean Ringrose, who apparently doesn't know how to work his camera.
dude, it's been a day, man. It's been a day.
What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you? I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this sweet bandana right here to wipe my new Gunner glasses, blue light filtering glasses to help my eye strain.
For sure, for sure. How was your holidays, man?
Oh, they're good. They're good. They were. Man, I got a PC story that, like, an actual computer story that I'm not gonna share on the air. That I've shared with a number of people already.
Okay.
Frustrations with multiple trips to Micro Center. Hey, Micro Center, if you somehow end up seeing this, I hold no ill will against you, but those extension cables for computers that you sell to go between motherboards and components, those are trash, and you should not sell them anymore, because I spent 3 days trying to figure out what was broken on a computer, and it turned out to be that, which is like the one thing you wouldn't expect to be broken. I
mean, you know how it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't my computer, so it wasn't a huge deal to me, but yeah, my poor sister has been out without her computer or at least had been without her computer for a few months. She had some power trouble and ended up replacing out pretty much the entire computer except the graphics card. Literally everything else on that computer is brand new, and her SSD drives and hard drives. But yeah, man, a full week of working on that. I took a week of vacation from work, and every day of that vacation was spent working on that damn computer. So, hell of a vacation, let me tell you. Best way to spend a vacation right there.
Family time, man. Family time.
Not at all. Not at all. So tonight, there have been a couple of things that have happened since we last had a show, which has been, it's been a short minute. We had.
Hey, Sean. Before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to the Surge and those guys, for this shirt that I'm wearing.
Oh, look at you!
Shirt
Look
that
at
I
you!
want.
Look at you!
Shirt that I won off of one of the contests that they throw during the playoffs on Twitter.
I hope Austin
maybe
is
one
not.
day we'll have to.
I hope Austin.
I'm sorry?
I hope Austin, one of their members, is not watching, because he won a signed jersey from them, and he still hadn't gotten it, and that was like 6 months ago.
Oh man,
he's a little salty about it.
That's very unfortunate, man. But
at least it's good to see that the Surge guys do pay up on.
Oh, for sure, man.
Like that.
It was a good deal, man, and I'm loving it, rocking it. Because honestly, I wasn't really thinking about purchasing any new gear yet. Just a little. I was gonna go on a little mini strike, but it's all good. It happened for a reason, so here I am rocking it. Back 2021.
Heck
new
yeah.
design here. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. Speaking of new designs and new things and Christmas and holidays and gifts and giving, the Dynamo did give us a gift that I don't think any of us actually saw coming when they took Joe Corona in the expansion draft, or not the expansion draft, the re-entry draft. And then subsequently turned around and actually got a contract offer to him, and turned around and actually signed him out from under Austin FC, especially after Austin selected him in the expansion draft. So kudos to the Dynamo front office for getting that deal done. I know a lot of Austin fans are going to are going to say that, oh, well, he's a player that we viewed as a depth player, a backup player. But I'll be honest, they were pretty damn excited when they took him in the expansion draft. And it's just nice to get one up on him, you know?
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah. It was, I was working a lot these past 3 weeks, man. And obviously, I was watching. But I didn't really have a lot of time to see my social media feed, especially Twitter, and I kept seeing, the Austin and Houston Dynamo going back and forth about some things, whatever, and then obviously the supporters and things of that nature. So it was one of those little tricky moves, sneaky kind of underneath the moves that you don't really expect from the Dynamo. But I mean, I'm kind of glad they did it. Joe Corona, I mean, obviously he's a legit player, played in Liga MX with Cholos and America, and obviously playing here with the Galaxy, he's done pretty well for himself. So, but yeah, just kind of a good way to kick off the rivalry. Hopefully it's not the only win that we have against them, here in the upcoming, season and months and things of that nature.
Yeah, and so let's, we're gonna talk about where he's gonna play, what he's gonna play, how he's gonna play. We'll get to that a little bit later. But that wasn't the only move the Dynamo made, and the second move the Dynamo made, I think, shocked me more than them actually taking Joe Corona in the re-entry draft, and that was trading for Fafa Pico from FC Dallas of all places. So Fafa comes to us as a player who they picked up from Philly a couple of years ago for $350,000 in allocation, and then we traded for him with basically $250,000 in allocation. So Dallas lost $100,000 in allocation by trading for him, and but they turned around and they did sign a couple players of their own. So. They clearly had plans, and he was probably not in their long-term plans at that point. But another, in my opinion, pretty solid pickup by the Dynamo, and another player that we'll definitely dive into a little bit more later. But do you have any quick thoughts on that, real quick, Mark?
This might be an unpopular thought, but I don't think Alice is losing too much right now.
Agreed.
As far as finances go. So I mean, I think they were able to, hey, let go of Fafa and say, here you go, whatever, hopefully he does better for you than what he did for us. But yeah, man, I mean, obviously somebody who Chad is familiar with from their time together, back in the, youth academy or whatever. And obviously he had a couple of appearances for the U.S. national team. So he kind of knows them pretty well. So, like I said, decent pickup, I don't know what really to expect of him. I mean, I know he's done okay, for Philadelphia prior to coming to Dallas, but we'll see.
And then also some another kind of gift that the season has brought us is Corey Ripken, who covers the Dynamo, has returned to the Houston area. And is basically starting up and has started his own kind of daily, kind of every other day email newsletter and website and kind of cover thing. It seems the Chronicle did not pick him up as at least a kind of a long-term journalist, which is a shame because the Dynamo and Dash could certainly use some kind of coverage from the Chronicle. But kudos to Corey for starting up his own little thing, and I signed up immediately as soon as I saw the link. I was probably one of the first ones to type my email in that on that page and submit to the newsletter. But I tell you what, the articles that he's writing right now are just as good as the articles he wrote when he was working for the Cron. And frankly, if you're getting that kind of coverage from a free source, then you can't turn it down. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, make sure you go and sign up on his site. And if you need the link, we'll tweet it out a little bit later on tonight when I get a chance to pull it up. But definitely kudos to Corey for that. If there's anybody who I genuinely hope can be successful in this kind of a solo venture, I definitely hope it's Corey, because he deserves all the credit and he deserves all the follows that we can give him, possibly.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I obviously up until recently I saw him pop up on my Twitter feed again because Obviously he had gone a little bit of an MIA or traveling around different city working elsewhere. So it was a pleasant surprise, and obviously I seen the retweets from the George account and obviously from Sean's personal account. Yeah, man, and I'm looking forward to reading his stuff, and signing up for the newsletter. I haven't had a chance. Like I said, I've been real busy, so hopefully I can get a chance over the weekend to do that and check out some of his articles.
So then there's all that, and then of course MLS in their infinite wisdom, and we're just kind of show rundown of what we're going to talk about because Mark and I did not have any prep time this week. Normally we have at least a few minutes this week. I was running very late, but Major League Soccer, in their infinite wisdom, decided to invoke the force majeure clause in the CBA, which was only added in the 2020 CBA right before COVID kind of really started going. They agreed, I think, in like the first week of February or last week of January. It was like really close to the preseason, basically. And so they announced that they basically invoked force majeure, which basically dumps that particular CBA and says we're going to start from scratch, essentially. Now, some other news came out today. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But, thoughts on Major League Soccer as a league dropping the existing CBA, just in general. Thoughts on that?
Well, I guess from the standpoint of if I'm putting myself on MLS shoes, I got to give them a round of applause, for them to kind of, to put that little bit of language in that contract to allow them to enable to do that, that's why they say you got to read the fine print and you got to make sure that you understand what you're signing and what you're agreeing to, even if it sounds like, so far-fetched or whatever. Sometimes you never know what things can happen and, where that clause can be put into action. Now, obviously, on the side of the players and the league in general, it kind of sucks. It kind of, because, the whole CBA thing was, and going up to it and then deciding what they're going to do it's supposed to be like a huge momentous moment for the players, for them, actually garnering some power, growing the league, obviously, taking it to the next level, MLS 5.0, I guess at this point. But it's kind of seemed real lackluster. Obviously, with the whole COVID thing in the beginning, put a dent into that, and then obviously now with the MLS enabling that provision, and going back to the CBA, what it was before, it kind of sucks for the players. But it could be a lot worse things happening, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, we'll talk about that here in just a short little bit, but I definitely wanted to get some kind of, preview thoughts, if you will. He hears music, Nestor. Do you have the music still playing in the background? You might also hear music, George, if you're, I don't know, have music playing in your own app, possibly. But so all of that, and then let's talk Dash real quick. Christy Mewis and... Christy Mewis and
Jane Campbell.
Thank you. Jane Campbell were called up to the U.S. Women's National Team. There's music on the stream. Hey, Nestor. I'll ping him here in a second because I guess he's not tuned in quite 100%. Yeah, both of them, Jane Campbell and thanks, George, and Fig. Jane Campbell and Christy Mewis called up to the U.S. Women's National Team. Obviously, a huge honor, something that's not super surprising in my opinion, especially for Jane Campbell and especially for Christy Mewis. Both of these players absolutely 100% without a doubt deserve this call up in particular, especially if you, if you watched 2020 Dash, you know exactly why those two players deserve the call up by the U.S. Women's National Team. And so it's great to see, and it's just a recognition of the effort and work the players put in during the Challenge Cup, obviously winning Challenge Cup, and then sounds like Rocket League music. Nestor, are you playing Rocket League in the background? That would be pretty damn funny, actually. Not gonna lie. Yeah, very, very cool to see both of them called up, and again, just in my opinion, absolutely deserved, and just great recognition for the club, great recognition for those two players, great recognition for James Clarkson and the work that he's done to put them in positions to succeed. So just, awesome, huge shout out.
Yeah, man. It's obviously well deserved for both of those ladies. And for Christy, she was Christy Muse. She was one of the 3 Dash players selected in last month's top 100 women footballers list by the Guardian, along with Rachel Daly and Shea Groom. So it's another achievement for her personally, which I think obviously she's doing really well. I think she's enjoying her time here in Houston, and let's hope she keeps it going, man. And she just keeps getting better and better and better.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes. So obviously we've got plenty, and I mean literally plenty to talk about tonight. Chat is hopping with a few people that are in there. Again, if you're tuning in for the first time, there's a couple of you apparently tuning in for the first time. And first of all, thank you. We appreciate you giving us a few minutes or a couple hours of your time, depending on how long we decide to hang around this week. But on top of that, do us a favor. Make sure you follow us on Twitch. Make sure you subscribe on Twitch if you can. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you get a free free Twitch sub every month. If you could hop into Twitch and connect it to your Amazon Prime account, you can give us a free sub, and trust me, we will love you for life. We already do anyways, but hey, extra love never hurts. What's up, Dynamo Insider? By the way, also, while I'm thinking about it, if you head over to Twitter and give a follow to @Dynamo Insider, they will greatly appreciate it. Did you hit your mark that you were trying to hit, Dynamo Insider? I know they were trying to hit like 100 follows or something like that in a short period of time.
What's up, Dynamo Insider? I know he was trying to hit 100. I think he did hit 100. Who was the lucky 100th person? I think Harry was the lucky 100th subscriber.
Nice.
Yeah, and then and I subtweeted him. Hey, somebody tried to get me to 200 because I was like 3 followers away. I just noticed it, and I was like, I don't know if I got there. I haven't looked. I don't think I haven't looked, so maybe I got there. Who knows?
That's awesome. It's this will tie into the Corey thing, but it's really cool to see this community in general. Just the combination of everybody kind of coming together a little bit right now. In spite of, to some extent, what the frustrations with ownership, the frustrations with the front office. There's more coverage now, in my opinion, than there was 2-3 seasons ago, 4 or 5 seasons ago. You've got the Peel, you've got you've got Dynamo Insider now, you've got Andres who Dynamic Foxtrot, you've got Corey obviously covering, you've got us covering, you've got I can't remember his name, but you've got Christian covering it. Christian, I think, is still doing his thing. You've got Toto Dynamo covering. You've got, there's so many different sources you can go get your news information and your Dynamo talk right now. I legit think if someone took the time, you could probably stream roughly 24 hours of content across, over a single day of just Dynamo stuff, Dynamo coverage stuff right now, between the various streams that are out there, the various tweets that are out there, Facebook groups, Facebook. It's just crazy how much this stuff is starting to blow up.
And can you only imagine if the club ever becomes a lot more active and a lot more things happening around with the club and stuff like that, it'll make mine and Sean's job a lot easier to talk about Dynamo, and things of that nature, because, when there's more things going around, more things popping as far as, just everything in general. We're not just talking just transfer or bringing new players in, but just, excitement around the club, or, the hype about the upcoming season, or just anything in general. It makes it a lot easier for myself, Sean, and obviously all the other people he mentioned earlier, as far as our fellow podcasters and Dynamo Insider and Andres with Foxtrot and all that good stuff. So, good looking out for those guys, and obviously we're so happy to have you guys here listening to us, and obviously sharing your opinions and us sharing our opinions and having a back and forth, man. That's all it's all about. We're all here and we're all doing what we do because we know we have a love for this club. And obviously, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't.
For sure, absolutely, 100% agreed. And I'll go on record. I've got season tickets again this year, and I'll be honest, I'm probably not even going to go to a single match, and it has nothing to do with the on-field performance. I just have some trepidations around specifically, COVID and everything else, and large gatherings. I know they're trying to do their best to kind of mitigate that as much as possible at the stadium, but. Yeah, in my opinion, why would I take the chance? I've got friends, I've got family that are immunocompromised, and It's just one of those things. I'm not going to take the chance that I can't go visit them because I contract COVID because somebody makes a mistake. It's going to happen eventually, so I'd rather protect it. But that's my opinion, my personal take. But mad respect to those that are going out there and supporting and have been out there and supported, the ones that attended those matches towards the end of the season where they allowed 20% of fans. It wasn't even that. It was a couple thousand fans in the stadium. Mad props to you guys for going out and supporting. And we could hear you on the stream. There were a couple of matches where we could hear EB actually outside the stadium playing, at least one that I can remember. And I do know they were actually playing outside the stadium, and you could hear it on the broadcast, which is freaking cool.
And now for myself, I mean, I'm still up in the air debating about it. I mean, I don't know, but for sure, if I'm going to go to a game this season, I do want to make it out to at least one or two Dash games for sure when I go support the ladies. We'll see how that goes as far as that time period and where they are with restrictions and what rules are going on and if they're allowing people into stadiums or not. So, yeah, for sure. If I do end up going to a game, I do want to for sure make sure I prioritize going to a Dash game, and and if I can go to a couple Dynamo games, that'd be great. But I'm not holding my breath about it either. I'm with you, Sean. Props to everybody who decides to go, and do that. That's cool, whatever. But as far as myself, I have people around me who I can't really risk. So.
For sure, brother, for sure. So a couple other things real quick, just again, business to take care of, right? So make sure you give, if you haven't already, make sure you give Mark a follow at Chase Segovia. It's on the stream. You can see it right there. Let's see if I point the right direction. Is it that way? No, it's that way.
Point out.
It's that way. Hey, I pointed the right direction. Nice. And then, of course, follow me if you can at Sean Ringrose. Those are both Twitter. And then we're on Twitter also with the Gen Orange kind of shared account. He and I will tweet from that occasionally together at Gen Orange Radio. Usually there's a poll posted every week, Mark. But holidays, we'll give Mark a break. It's brand new year. He missed the first week that we actually had a show. It's okay. It's okay. Hey, starting off great. No, I'm just poking fun. He'll have one up next week, right, Mark? Right, Mark? Right?
No, for sure, man. I mean, usually those, for those who are new, who or for those who hear later on, listen to us later on, there's for most likely 90% of the time a poll question of the day, depending, if we're gonna go live that Wednesday. But unfortunately today, it was kind of thrown on me last minute. I didn't know we were coming off vacation already, so but it's all good. We'll have one for next time.
Yeah, to be fair, he didn't know. I will vouch for him this time. Yeah, no, I'm not intentionally flexing the bandana. It was kind of bugging me that it was not folded up at least a little bit. So
go ahead and flex it.
Yeah. For you who don't know, the Dynamo, for those that were season ticket holders, did send out these very fantastic bandanas, which have the Dynamo and the Dash logos on there. The new Dynamo FC, and it says H-Town Hold It Down, which is pretty cool. And it's orange, which, hey, I love as much orange as I can get. And also, for those that don't know, you see that lovely flag behind me. Yes, that is a Houston Dynamo FC and Houston Dash joint flag. And it is black, and it is glorious. And if you have not signed up to become a season ticket holder, I implore you to do so simply for the fact of getting the free swag, because that is some of the coolest swag I have ever seen.
It looks nice. It looks real nice.
So, enough talking and chatting and that kind of enough talking about just general business stuff as we come back from a bit of an extended vacation of like 3 weeks. I think we were ultimately ended up having off, maybe 4 weeks. It was a good little period of time there. Yeah, it was a good little period of time for sure. But we are back, and so one other thing that we always ask our followers and our viewers to do is just when you can share us out with your friends and your family, coworkers. I can't tell you the number of times I hear from people. Specifically that tell me that they're Dynamo fans and they started talking to a coworker and the coworker found out because they wore a Dynamo shirt or a Dynamo kit or a Dynamo hat one day. And then they end up sharing the show with the coworkers, and then we hear from the coworker and they're like, "Oh man, we heard about you from so-and-so." And it's like, "Oh, that's the coolest thing in the world." Like, word of mouth is great. We love it. So just do us a favor, share us with people because it's very likely they don't even know we exist. And frankly, we want to grow. We've been growing. Trust me, we're growing quite a bit. It's pretty astonishing sometimes to look and see the numbers at times, be like, whoa, where'd that happen? Where'd that come from? How'd that happen? Yeah, definitely do us a follow and share us out where you can. We want to keep growing. The more we grow, the more cool stuff we can do, and the more access we might be able to get. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Just saying.
Hopefully.
So,
yeah.
With that being said, Mark. Yeah, with that being said, Mark, let's dive right into the first thing today. So let's talk, because it came up in the chat as well. Where does Fafa Pico play in Tabs formation? He is a kind of partially a center forward winger hybrid, very similar to Morrow, very similar to Bahamich, if you will, very similar to Lassiter. We've got like 4 of those players now that can kind of move and be fluid between those 2 positions of winger out wide and also centrally up top. Where does he play, in your opinion?
It's crazy because we've been hearing all these things about the youth, and he's not as youthful as we thought, or as I thought. And I don't know, man. Obviously, I've seen him play with Philadelphia. Mainly, I kind of remember him more with Philadelphia than I do with him with FC. Man, I don't know, because I'm really into seeing Lassiter and Bahamich, starting up front with Christian, if that's the starting 3 up front. So obviously he would be on the bench for me, maybe my number 1 go-to. Especially if he's a hybrid and he can come in as a 9 and obviously as a winger or as an 11 or whatever. It's kind of hard to say, because if you say best case scenario, I want him starting, scoring goals, and that means one of your international signings, as far as Bahamich or Lassiter, not doing as well. So in my opinion, I would prefer for him to be one of, hopefully, super sub or whatever. My about you, Sean?
You completely broke up for the entire thing that you just said. Like literally everything, basically, where you started explaining where you saw him, that was when you just like cut out completely.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, man.
That says we got to start a GoFundMe for your ISP.
You know what? I've been looking, man, because I've been doing some other things, and I need a stronger signal over here in my office where I'm at. So, but before I guess I got interrupted, I guess I'll start off with the whole thing. For me, my preference would be for him to be a super sub. Because obviously if he's your starting, that means your top 2 your international signings. Obviously, we're talking about Lassiter and Bahamich have not lived up to their billing, I guess. So, in my opinion, I would want him off the bench as a super sub, because he's a guy who's obviously familiar with MLS. He's not like your typical he's gonna score so many goals. I mean, but he'll give you a goal here and there. So. And obviously he was brought in because he has a lot of pace, so he'll bring a different dynamic to the game. Obviously, something kind of similar to what Elise brought to us before he left to Portugal. So I mean, for me, if he's our super sub and he contributes anywhere from 7 to 10 goals for the season, I'd be extremely happy with that outcome.
Yeah, can't argue with 7 to 10 goals. I think for any player, honestly, on this team, 7 to 10 goals feels comfortable for me. And if multiple players can get 7 to 10 goals, I feel even better about the season, just in general. But I want to say this. I think Pico's best position is as a winger. He's very similar, in my opinion, to Lassiter, who I think also is much better on the wing. Now, Pico does actually have the capability to put in some pretty good crosses from the wing. He's also pretty talented dribbling into the box, cutting in, very similar to what Elise did. And Pico does have some speed to burn. He's not a slow player. He hasn't lost any pace as he's aged, which he's not even that old. But what I think Pico is going to bring most of all is somebody who is going to take that pressure off Quintero. When teams are starting to overload onto Darwin Quintero, Pico is going to be able to pull that ball, and he's going to be able to create opportunities for other players, which is going to ultimately force the defenders over to his side, at least, or split the defense a little bit. So that gives Quintero more options going into the box when he does get the ball. And let's face it, Quintero is still going to be the focal point of this attack. He's still going to be that creator because he is that good even at his age, and you can't argue with it. The output that he showed on the field, the opportunities that he created on that pitch were just absurdly good. Now, there are times he disappeared, especially later in the season, and that, in my opinion, is because a lot of teams started double and triple teaming him as soon as he got the ball, or they were trying to get in the passing lanes before he got the ball. And so hopefully having FIFA on the other side will help mitigate that a little bit.
But yeah, man, no, obviously, and the reason why I would love him as a super sub is because imagine with his pace coming on the last 15, 20 minutes against tired legs, it would just give him that much more advantage against tired defenders, and he could be that spark that we need for the end of the game, because sometimes it's kind of a Dynamo norm the last couple of seasons where we end up losing games that we should be winning, or giving up games that we should have won and making them turning them into ties. So yeah, I think he would be fantastic as a super sub coming on the last 15, 20 minutes, with that pace and speed to go against tired legs.
Absolutely. Yep. Agreed. And so FIFA out wide. So here's the next question that comes along with that is, you're bringing in another winger. You've got young guys in Mateo Bahamich. You've got young guys in Ariel Lassiter. You've got Memo. You've got these players that already kind of play out wide. So where do you slot? Who are you replacing out of that starting lineup to slot FIFA Pico into that lineup, into the starting lineup?
Well, I'm not putting him in my starting lineup. Like I said, if he's in a starting lineup, that means Bahamich or Lassiter are not doing what they're supposed to do, and they're not coming with what expectations we expect out of those two signings. So, in my opinion, I'm not putting him in my starting lineup.
I'm gonna alter that, and here's why. I think you do, and here's what you get with Fafa that you don't have with a Bahamich and a Lassiter in there. You get a veteran presence that understands MLS. You get a presence that has had impacts on matches. Lassiter has as well. So I think our starters are probably, at least at the very beginning of the season, probably going to be Lassiter and FIFA out wide. But the thing is that is different in how that's going to play out is by having Bahamich available off the bench. That is likely going to be one of your first two subs, and you're probably going to make those subs around between the 65th and the 75th minute, because you want to give Bahamich plenty of time with his pace and his ability and his strength to run at defenders and to create mismatch opportunities pace-wise. And I think knowing that Bahamich is capable of doing that, that's just where it's going to end up being. I think George has it 100% correct. You're talking Quintero on the left, you're talking Lassiter in the middle, and Fafa Pico on the right. I think that's exactly how we line up to start the season. And I think what we're going to see is a lot of switching between all three of those players. I think Quintero is going to cut inside, and when he does, Lassiter is going to switch out wide. And when Lassiter cuts to the right, you're going to see Fafa cut inside. You're going to see a lot of just switching in and out, and I think that's going to be great. There's going to be a lot of fluidity in the front line, and that's going to create where defenders don't know who they're supposed to mark, and that's our best case scenario. If defenders somehow end up losing their mark, that means somebody's running free in the box. And any three of those players have the capability to notch that goal home.
I see. I'm not disagreeing with what Georgina's saying. It's just I think Quintero starts off as our 10. Not too sure about him on the left wing right now. Obviously I know he could do the job there, but I would rather have Lassiter over there, or or Bahamich, whichever. I can't remember which foot they play off of, but yeah. And then what happened to Ramirez up as a 9? Everybody talked about so much about him getting the opportunity to go, and now Maro's out the way. This is his time to shine, right?
I mean, yes, but again, a lot. The one thing that I have seen with fluid kind of front threes, front fours, if you will, is that they're very reliant upon each other. They're very reliant upon getting service into specific areas and being able to create those mismatches. It's important that all of our attackers are pushing hard towards the goal, because anybody who's lingering back, anybody who's not putting in that full effort moving forward, what happens is we lose that mismatch on that side, or that one defender can kind of push in a little bit more into the center, or out wide if it's a center back. And that just makes it harder for us to get distribution into the box. And I think that's what we ended up seeing, especially late in the season, where we had a lot of our wingers especially would get the ball and they'd go running, but they had no support either in the center or the other side of that box. And so the cross would go and there'd be nobody there to get it, or the pass would come into the box, the through ball into the box, and there's just nobody there. The ball goes out of bounds or whatever. So I think there is plenty of potential in those front three, those front four players. It just remains to be seen. Are they good enough together? Can they find that chemistry together? Can they gel together? We talked about that at the beginning of last season too, but it applies this season. It applies really any season, but this season in particular, can they find that chemistry in a very short period of time? And can they find a way to really cause opposing defenses mismatch problems and create the opportunities that they need to create so that they can score the goals they need to score so we can win, and hopefully enough goals early on in matches that we don't have to worry about giving up just a 1-goal lead. Maybe it's a 3-goal lead and we're okay. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, it's also going to depend on what kind of 4-3-3 Tab is going to play. Because if he's, in my opinion, if he's playing an attacking 4-3-3, that means he has a number 10 up front, right behind us, like possibly a second striker. It would be Lassiter, Ramirez, and Bahamic, and then obviously Darwin behind Ramirez for me. And I think that would put a lot of pressure on defenders, obviously. And then, but if he does go play more of a holding 4-3-3, where he has 2 8s and a 6, where Matias Vera is the middle center, the DM, obviously, and you have 2 8s, and obviously with Memo and either Corona or Seren, and obviously you see where the 9, in this case being Ramirez, has to fall back a little bit because he has to help out with the defending and all those things. So it makes it kind of hard to move back up and be in those areas when those crosses come in, because he's playing from so far back. So I mean, it just depends on what kind of personnel he has and what his plans are, I guess, and obviously opponent. But I've never been that type to switch my formation based on my opponent, because I feel like my opponent should switch based off me, and I should keep going, regardless of what the other person has across the field, unless it's something, unless it's just a big, disadvantage or whatever, but honestly, in MLS, there's a lot of parity. It's just, I don't think that there should be any change. If he does decide to go with either the holding 4-3-3 or an attacking 4-3-3, he needs to understand that if he goes with the holding, the 9 has to fall back a little, because he has to help, and he can't be up there all the time, because, he's technically playing a false 9 role instead of a true 9.
Yeah, I do agree, and it's especially with these players. I think we're going to see a lot of false 9. I really do, because we don't have a true striker, and that was kind of called out by Fig in the chat. He says he feels like we need a proven Liga MX striker, like a Rui Diaz, a Sebastian Blanco, a Felipe Moura, Pulido, Hara, Bo, Zelarayan. I can pronounce the name, I promise. And all the other ones that exist.
Those cost money, though.
You're not wrong. And I do want to touch on that for here just a second. Sorry, talking about Pasher. Okay. That might have been RGV that acquired Pasher. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think we've acquired Pasher. I think if we had, I would have heard about it by now. I would have heard about it for sure. Going back to what we were talking about, you bring up the point about having to have the money to do it. I think the problem for us right now, and we talked about it to kind of close out last year, not last season, but actually last year, that we're going to kind of have one of those seasons where the expectations probably do need to be pretty low in general going in. We're not going to go and splash the cash. We're not going to be a team that's going to drop big on a huge name DP. As I understand it, there's a strong intention by Gabriel Brenner to sell his stake in the Dynamo. It's been talked about on Twitter. It's been talked about by The Athletic. There's been sources that have come out and said things. Look, if there's an opportunity that arises and he can sell his stake, he's going to do it. But on the flip side of that, he's also not going to bring in a big name, big DP player not because he can't afford it. I think he probably could if he had to. But the problem is that increases the cost, the cost, not the value, but the actual cost of the team as he's trying to sell it. And I think right now his goal is to just sell. And then go ahead.
But you know, the thing is, like, you can look at it from that standpoint, but you also got to look at it from the standpoint as the buyer. You know, do I want to buy a car that's plain and simple, or do I want a car that has a little bit of a, you know, maybe some nice rims, you know, a little bit of chrome on it, you know, maybe a little bit of umph in the engine, you know. So you also got to think of that mindset, because I mean, if he's just trying to strip the club down to the bare minimum, maybe not the bare minimum, that might be too harsh, but you know, you also got to take in mind, you know, you got to make your whatever you're selling attractive to buyers, you know. And I think that's one of the things that he has to take into consideration as well.
So real quick, I want to, because I actually looked this up because I was kind of curious. I remember the Tyler Pasher name, and I was trying to figure out where Tyler Pasher came into the mix. And it was basically around Christmas where Jeff Reuter had reported on Twitter that the Dynamo were very close to finalizing a deal for Pasher from Indy 11. They were going to send $50,000 transfer fee to Indy 11 in exchange for Pasher, who's basically a striker, essentially. You know, look, Pasher is one of those players that he's a young player. He's a player that would fit Tab's style. But again, he's a player that I don't feel like is really that MLS, you know, elite echelon level of striker. And that's also why you're talking about a USL player. I mean, you know, it's a guy that's we already talked about this, Sergio. Maybe if you were here to start the show, you would have known. But you know, he's a player that frankly, you know, he's not going to be a world changer. He's not going to be a world beater. He's not even going to be, in my opinion, an MLS beater. You know, he's not going to beat MLS defenders regularly. He's going to score goals, you know, but I think he's more of a depth striker. You know, he is probably being brought in, to be totally honest with you, to back up Christian Ramirez. And that's the next question I have. Is Christian Ramirez a starter, or is he still on your bench? We talked about the front three. None of us had Christian Ramirez in the front three.
I did.
Well, you're special, Mark. We already know that. Sorry, I said none of us. I meant me in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Everybody who has sanity still left in their blood. You
know, I mean, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying, though. But like everybody, you know, for the most part, last year, everybody's, you know, and the last couple of years since Ramirez has come in, you know, everybody's been, you know, you got to give Christian a chance. You got to give Christian a chance. Blah blah. This and that. He can do a lot of great things. This is his chance, right? This is opportunity. Model's out the way. He's been sent to Tijuana. There's nobody really there else aside from, you know, Lassiter. But like, you know, like we said, they're hybrid players where they're more likely better on the wings than as a number 9. You know, even though I know Lassiter can play the 9, but I think he'd be better suited for an 11 role. But yeah. So I mean, your MLS, you talk about leadership and having somebody who knows MLS. Well, Christian knows MLS. He scored a lot of goals in MLS with Minnesota and LAFC. So maybe he can start scoring some goals for us now, you know. I feel like I said, I was a little down on him last season because, you know, he was given the opportunity to start because of, you know, different things with Mauro not being available for whatever reason, you know, for injuries and other things. And he didn't really grab the bull by the horns. But you know, now he has nobody in front of him really, and this is his time for him to go show out if he's going to show out, because Ramirez is 28, 29 years old. It's now or never. So, you know, let's hope he does it.
Man, I keep hitting it, like I keep going, oh, I need to tweet this real quick, and then as soon as I do that, you're like, oh, I'm done with my statement. I'm like, crap.
Oh, man, I'm saying, no, it's all good.
Keep talking.
Yeah,
that's what I'm telling you. Keep talking.
So basically, I mean, you know, the whole thing with me, it just comes up to what Tab wants to do as far as the formation goes. I mean, because the thing is, if you're gonna give Ramirez the best opportunity to succeed, then he needs to be up there as a 9, you know, a true 9 focal point. He can't be a false 9 where he's falling back, having to go defend deep. Because, you know, we saw what it was with Mauro. I mean, even though, you know, he wants every player to defend the ball, win the ball back. But there's a difference between winning the ball back as a number 9 inside your own box as opposed to winning it back midfield, you know, as a number 9, you know, and that's a big difference. And I think that's one of the reasons why they have such a hard time with the transition game. And, when they're losing the ball, having to go back and defend, and then or when they win the ball, being able to attack because there's nobody up front to pass the ball to start the counter attack, and they have to run so quickly to get up there. So when they get in front of the goal, they're tired, or they don't get a good first touch, and they just bobble the whole thing, and the whole play is dead.
That that's an interesting point too, in kind of thinking about the way that we play in the tactical approach and kind of Tab's desired style of play. You really do need a strong center forward, somebody who is capable of holding the ball up to let your wingers and to let Quintero and to let your midfielders get a little bit more into the attack. Your striker is not necessarily, and I say this kind of knowing that this is going to ruffle some feathers, your striker in Tab's formation is not necessarily your primary goal scorer. A lot of his responsibility is pulling defenders away from goal so that your wingers and your other players can find those opportunities. His responsibility is to hold the ball up. His responsibility is to create as much as other players, have that as their responsibility. And I think, there were moments where you could see some, a bit of that link up between Quintero and Ramirez starting to form again. From their time with Minnesota, they've got experience with each other. So I don't know. I say, that, Ramirez and Fafa and Lassiter are going to be your starting top three, but maybe that changes a little bit. Sorry, I said Lassiter, I meant Quintero. They're going to be your starting top three. That may change, and I think that's probably a good thing that we have enough attackers, to say that. But on the flip side of that, we can say that. But again, where do the goals come from? You're going to have to have every player, that I just mentioned have 7 to 10 goals if you want to be competitive in this league. If your defense is going to be giving up 1 to 2 goals easily a match.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as we're focusing, with the wingers and forwards and all that stuff, which is great. Obviously we need to score goals, but I'm still in the part of when are we going to get to the defense, because obviously, yeah, it's great that we can score 2 to 3 goals a game, but we give up 4 or 5, does it really matter? I don't care too much for having a player who can score 15 goals if our plus minus goal is negative 22, so it doesn't really, I don't really care for that kind of stuff. It's just what matters to me is the wins and losses and ties, and the points at the end of the season, and making sure that we qualify for playoffs and things of that nature. So I mean, obviously, it's great to have a goal scorer of that type of that caliber, or have multiple players who can score in double digits, but until we can fix this leaky ass defense, it's all for for shits and giggles, So
yeah, it is the one thing. I think both of us said it in the last few shows before this one, especially towards the end of last season specifically, how center back had to be a position you addressed. I think I do think our outside backs are probably sufficient enough to be okay. But when your center backs are just giving up the opportunities that they were giving up, you got to do something. Now, with that being said, a lot of that does fall to Seren being more of an attack-minded player. Now, Sergio's going to call me out on this because we had a little bit of a back and forth, tit for tat, in Surge chat a couple of weeks ago. Actually, earlier this week. No, it was last week, where we were talking about Seren and Vera. And I pulled up the statistics because I was kind of really curious. I said that, in my opinion, based upon what I was seeing, and maybe you'll agree with me, Mark, looking at it, Vera is the better defender out of those two players. Would you not agree with that statement? Is that not a fair statement?
Well, yeah. Well, that's Vera's primary position, a 6. That's what he's there for.
So if I told you, now let me stop you right there before you go on too much.
Okay.
What if I told you that Vera's defensive stats were actually worse than Seren's last season?
Say it again. I'm sorry, you cut off a little bit on my side.
That's fine. What if I told you Vera's defensive stats were worse than Seren's last season?
Then that means we have an issue at our 6 position, number 6. Realistically, which honestly, it wouldn't surprise me because our whole defense was crap. And the thing is, like, what I'm going back to, the 4-3-3 formation that Tab is applying, he's playing with 2 8s and a 6. You know, at least with the attacking, 3-3, you can play with 2 6s and a 10. Or whatever. You can run them back and forth or whatever, depending on how you want to do it. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, you're sacrificing a midfielder and Seren. So we're gonna take Seren here because Seren can play either as an 8 or a 6, right? And you're using Seren more as your right-sided 8 across from Memo, right? At this period, instead of using him as your right-sided defensive mid as another 6 across from Vera, which is honestly needed. But if we do that, we're giving up Seren's passing abilities to help, start the attacking process for the 10 and for the attacking players. So it's a little bit of a give and go. That's why you need to work on the defense and find you a strong 6 that can hold that if you're going to go with the holding 4-3-3. So I mean, it's damn if you do and damn if you don't. Basically, I mean, especially if you don't have the players of quality to make sure that they can hold that position down or hold that fort down defensively. So
let me ask you a question. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Do you pencil in Joe Corona over Vera, or do you pencil in Joe Corona over Seren?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Well, man, I can't really say, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that I watched a lot of LA Galaxy games last season, so I'm not really sure how his play was on the pitch, right? Obviously I know name alone, Corona, everybody's excited about him as a player, but I'm not sure yet, man. I gotta see what he brings to the table because, like, honestly, I think Corona and Seren are kind of the same player. To be honest, he might be a year younger than Seren, honestly, but they both have MLS experience. They both have international experience. All those things, whatever. The one thing that Seren obviously has an advantage of is he already has a year under Tab. Corona as a defensive mid, man, I don't know. I don't think he has the body for that. I don't think he has the ball, the huevos, like we call it in Spanish, to do it. I think he'll get beat easily off the ball. I don't think he has the speed and pace for that.
Man, it's interesting. Serge says you can't play Corona at defensive mid. And Serge says Corona over Seren. So, it appears based on these comments, and I'm asking because I genuinely didn't really know because I've not followed enough of Joe Corona.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I watched him a lot when he was with America because, obviously I play with my team is America, but like, he came off the bench, and the thing is, like, when you have a club that has players that hold down their position right and can cover up for another player, you don't really see the mistakes of a player, right? And this is where we're going for with Seren or Vera, depending whether or not Corona is going to take one of the spots. And obviously the thing is, like you just mentioned, Vera statistically looks like a bad 6, but you give it the eye test and he does really well as far as stopping the attack and things of that nature. Obviously, he can only do so much by himself. He's gonna tire out. He's gonna make costly mistakes, or the attack's gonna get the ball taken away, and he's gonna have to make that tactical foul to stop the counter attack or whatever. But yeah, as far as like right now today, me personally, I would have to go Seren over Corona just because of the simple fact that he already has that year under Tab and he understands the system. Now, that's not to say that Corona won't exceed him, and hopefully he does. I mean, that's why you bring in a player of that magnitude, right? To hopefully better the position that you're trying to, better that position. So, but today, 6th of January, I'm going Seren over Corona.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see in preseason, right? Like, I know I'm asking you to basically make a statement on it, but in reality, I need to see it in preseason. I need to see where Corona fits, where where his comfort level is. And let's face it, there are going to be some players that Tab is going to bring in during his tenure, and that are going to be players that aren't viewed as big players, right? They're not viewed in that way. But because of Tab's familiarity with him, because of past experiences with him, Tab feels that he's going to be able to unlock them. And Joe Corona may be one of those players where, hey, Tab had him at one point, and Tab helped him kind of bring up through the ranks. Tab helped him develop a little bit. So Tab understands what it's going to take to get the most out of Joe Corona. And that being the case, then, Tab knows where he wants to play Joe Corona, right?
Let me ask you something, Sean. And let me just play devil's advocate here. Would you be upset if Fafa and Corona were first off the bench, both of them?
No.
Like if they came in
I wouldn't.
And they solidified being first off the bench. No, obviously Fafa being the first attacking player off the bench and Corona being the first midfielder off the bench.
I wouldn't, and here's why. Because if that's the case, that means that Mohamed Lassiter, Quintero, Ramirez, our existing players in those positions are succeeding. Seren is killing it. Vera's killing it. Memo's out there destroying players. I mean, if that happens, or hey, maybe Danny Rios came good, right out of the gate, or maybe Palomino has suddenly figured out how to make Tab happy, whatever it is. But if that happens and those two players end up on the bench to start the season, that just means that younger players outplayed them. And I'm okay with that because it means that Tab's doing exactly what he said he was going to do when he got here, which is find a way for young players to prove that they belong and give them opportunities.
Oh, truly agree. I mean, I to be honest, like I said, obviously the whole gist of this whole offseason was that they were going to go youthful, right? But then you go and sign two players that are borderline 30 years old. Well, Corona is 30 and Fafa 29. So I mean, like I said, I don't know if it's because they're supposed to come in and bring veteran presence, which is fine, but they also can bring presence off the bench, and show and bring that extra oomph that they need for that last 15, 20 minutes. And I wouldn't be against that, to be honest. We've always needed more quality off the bench, and more depth off the bench, and if those two guys provide that, I'd be happy with them as quality depth players. So
and I mentioned it, but I want to reiterate that I think it's important that if that is the case, if those players weren't brought in to be subs, they weren't. That was not the intent of bringing those players in. But if they end up being subs to start the season or at some point throughout the season, that means that other players have outplayed them. That means that our young players are finding their stride. They're finding their mark in MLS. And frankly, that's what we want to see. We don't necessarily want to see those two players starting every match this season, because if they do, that means the young players aren't coming true. That means the young players aren't beating them out in practice, and that means the young players aren't developing the way they need to develop to show Tab that they deserve to play. And frankly, I want our young players playing. I really, really do, and I would be perfectly content if our young players end up supplanting at least 3 or 4 other, veteran players that I expect to be starters at the beginning of the season. Like I said, if that happens, then, all bets are off on what the Dynamo can do this season.
Agreed.
But, we did talk about how the D-mid, center mid really has an impact on the defense and the center backs, and maybe by having, if Joe Corona starts next to Vera as a deep lying center mid / D mid, maybe that unlocks a little bit more of that defense able to kind of figure out, and switch out, and Joe maybe covers a little better. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But if that happens, maybe that makes our center backs not quite as bad as they were last season. With that being said, they were pretty atrocious consistently throughout the season. And frankly, a lot of that came tactically because of how we were approaching matches. We were willing to sacrifice, being counterattacked against in order to try to get our attack going, up high. And when we were on point and when we were really running hard and scoring those goals, it wasn't an issue. But once those goals started drying up, once Elise was gone and no longer starting, it was just a waterfall effect. I mean, we just had no way to overcome how vulnerable we were at the back. Now, if we can find that attack again and that push and that counterattack and be absolutely, deadly on the counterattack again, then then our defense, as bad as they were last season, can be tremendously better because all it takes is just our offense being consistently that much better. Go ahead.
But you see the games where we got into an early lead, an early 2-3 goal lead on the other opposing team. When you do that and those goals are coming, then you can always sub off and bring an extra defensive midfield to help on the defense, right? But like you said, when the goals dry up and they don't come because you don't have a formidable 9, 10, or 11 that can constantly keep pressure and put the ball behind the net, and that's when it sucks because you're pushing so much up front and you're not making it count by scoring the goals that you leave your defense high and dry. So when you lose the ball and they counterattack, poor Vera is the only on the defense before they get to the defense, and he can only do so much. He only has 2 fouls to give per game, and that's that. So hopefully they can find somebody that can be a more constant goal scorer, because like I said, it's one of those things where what do I want? Do I want 3 players scoring 10 goals, or do I want 1 player scoring 30? It's kind of one of those type of questions. But as long as the goals are constant, regardless if it's 1 player scoring 25 plus or it's 3 players scoring anywhere between 8 to 12 goals, I just need the goals to be constant and not just be all in one, 1-6-1 game against, whoever. And then the next 3 matches, it's 0-1, we lose 0-2, 1-2, and things of that nature. So.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. And it is going to be interesting to see, going into preseason, where Tab plays specific players, how he plays specific players, what his tactical approach is. We don't have a whole lot of opportunity with the draft necessarily. You're not going to find can I use the term world beater? But I think I think it's important to use that term. You're not going to find a world beater in the draft. Most likely the percentages are not in your favor. You might find a starter if you're extremely lucky, but most players taken in the super draft are going to end up being players that contribute in 2 to 3 years at best. Maybe in a year, but usually 2 to 3 years at best. And many of them just end up being USL players. And with Corona still being a thing, at least to start the season, we're pretty sure. Travel is a lot more difficult. And so with the Dynamo having currently the only opportunity to send those players to RGV, I don't expect it to be a situation where a player gets drafted or a player gets, brought in, that's a young player that needs to develop just a little bit before they get the opportunity. I don't see that trip to RGV being overly beneficial for them, for those young players at this point. And I want to talk on the RGV thing real quick because it was announced, essentially reported last week or the week before, that RGV basically now the Dynamo are relinquishing technical control of RGV, which means that player salaries will now be paid out of RGV's budget. That means that RGV will maintain or gain control of player acquisitions. They will gain control of player movement, essentially. They get to pick their coach. They get to pick their technical staff. It's going to be much more of a USL club and kind of just a loose affiliation than it's been previously. But on the flip side of that, if the U23 league, reserve league that's been discussed and been reported, if that does come into play with MLS, I don't expect it to be a huge loss for the Dynamo. And frankly, I think it's got to be better than what RGV and the Dynamo have had previous for RGV. So. Just keep that in mind. RGV may not be a factor this season at all, and going forward may not be much of a factor, if any, for the next few seasons at the very least.
So, well, anybody who's listened to the show and follows me on Twitter, when it comes to this topic, they know I'm really for the reserve team or the fringe first team players to be as close to the first team as possible. This whole RGV thing is just not. It's not good for either side, and I'm kind of happy for those guys down in the valley that they finally get to call their own shots, I guess, basically. and have a team. Those guys down there deserve to have a team, a winning culture that that they can support and call their own. So I'm happy for them as far as that standpoint goes. And for the Dynamo, hopefully this U23 thing does happen. And imagine, I mean, look, we got players like Castillo, Rios, Palomino, Limoy, Junqua, players, that don't necessarily get as many minutes, but that can be playing that same weekend that the Dynamo playing on a field at Houston Sports Park, or could be playing at BBVA Stadium or whatever, the day before or whatever, depending however they want to do it. And that's great because they're there. You get the Dynamo supporters and go out there and watch those guys, or whoever. It makes it more of a reality for these players, these fringe players, or even for the academy players that get called up to play for those U23 squads, to kind of be there, be like, man, I'm almost there, and give you that extra motivation to keep going and keep pushing to make that first team. So yeah, the whole RGV thing, I was never for it, man, because I've, obviously watching as much global soccer as I do around the world, all the soccer teams have their youth academies and their U23 squads, their backyard, so.
Yeah. Yeah, George says Palomino scores at Austin FC after we party at our mansion in pregame. For those that don't know, George is a Surge member. Figueroa says still better than current El Salvador national team. In my opinion, Seren is less than Corona. I think that's fair. Talking about, and you brought it up. You said honestly, the era of U.S. men's national team and where Corona was being selected was a bit trash. I mean, that's fair, but let's be real. It was still better than Honduras. Still better than El Salvador. Oh God, I can't believe I said that. I'm never gonna live that down.
But well, yeah, I mean, but see what you're comparing them to now. The U.S. is supposed to be neck to neck with Mexico. That's in this region. Sure. They're supposed to be one A, one B. At least that's what's been engraved in our heads, right? That the U.S. men's national team should be on par with Mexico. But they're here talking about. Well, at least we're better than Honduras and El Salvador.
No. It was not. It was not me comparing the U.S. men's national team quality to El Salvador, Honduras, or any Central American team or Caribbean team. What I was trying to point to, because clearly that did not get understood, is.
I wasn't saying. What I'm saying is like that era of United States men's national team, which is the era between the whole 2010 World Cup qualifying, World Cup, with them going as far as it did against Belgium and doing that, and between the European kids, and hopefully having a great 2022 World Cup. This era in between was not a good era of U.S. men's national team soccer.
Sure, but it was still better. But here's the thing: you're saying that, and that's great. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It was still better than what El Salvador brought to the table. For sure. Again, if I'm comparing the two players based off of the national teams that they played for, it doesn't. Sergio is making a good point. Mo Salah is not a good player because Egypt sucks. That's a pretty good point.
The same thing with Alfonso Davies in Canada. I mean, Canada's a trash soccer nation, for the most part. And until recently with Davis and Jonathan David and other players, I mean, I understand what he's trying to say as far as national team comparison, but what I'm saying right now is the reason why I take Seren over Corona at this moment is because he has that ear under tab. I don't doubt that Corona has the talent to overtake him when the season starts, and he probably does. And if he does, that's good because that's the reason you sign a player like that, right? But if he doesn't, or if he doesn't get to that level, then it's understandable. For me, I feel like Corona and Seren are kind of the same player, to be honest. And that's not saying much, obviously y'all know my background. I'm Salvadorian. I'm not trying to hold Seren up high because he's Salvadorian. I have a lot of respect for the guy, whatever. But when it comes to, hey, which guy is going to make me better on the pitch? Which guy is going to help me win games? If it's Corona over Seren, then great. That's the player I want on the pitch. I don't care about where you come from or how well you've done with your national team or all this other nonsense, you know?
And frankly, we can't, that approach is fine, but that means there's nothing we can do to address it, right? There's nothing we can do to talk about it because that simply comes down to which player ends up being better on the pitch. And that's going to come from practices. That's going to come from preseason matches. That's going to come from playing time during the season. Look, Seren has a one-up right now because he's got the familiarity with the players around him. But I think that only goes so far. And before you chime in and say, well, that's exactly why Seren should be starting, I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to say this. Sometimes having a different player who plays even just slightly differently than the previous player in that same position can make a world of difference for the players around him. The one thing Seren struggles with is he is not a leader on the pitch. Joe Corona is a player who could feasibly, now I'm not saying he's going to be, but he could feasibly be a leader on the pitch in that area of the field. Seren is not that player, and that is what we absolutely miss, and nobody would argue that because we have had no leadership on this team for the last 3 to 4 seasons. When Vicente Sanchez retired, we were done when it came to leadership, and we haven't had a true leader on the pitch since then.
No, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said, but I'm saying, there's no games there's no MLS games being played in January, none that I know of, right? But obviously, if there was a game today, that's the reason why I would have him over Corona because if there were obviously without seeing any preseason, any whatever, he would be, in my opinion, over him because of the fact that he has that familiarity with the club and the team. So and I understand that you put a different person in that position, he can create so many things, but he also put a different player in that position, he can mess up things even worse.
It can, but that's where we have to trust in Tab to make the right decisions. I mean, we can speculate about where players are going to play, who's going to start over who, etc. But at the end of the day, it comes down to Tab having to make the right decisions, having to make the right calls as to who deserves to start, who doesn't deserve to start, etc. And really, it's I look at last season and I go, you only have one way to really go, and that's up. You can't really go down from last season. We won 4 matches last season. Yes, it was a shortened season and COVID and everything.
But you were still last place.
What?
I said, but it doesn't matter. It's short season, long season. We were still last place.
We weren't last place, but I digress. Cincinnati was last place.
In the conference. I'm not.
Well, in the conference, and that's only because Cincinnati went and played in the Eastern Conference last season. Because we wouldn't have been last place in the Western Conference if Cincinnati hadn't been moved to the Eastern Conference during MLS's back. I'm just saying.
Doesn't Cincinnati have a winning record against us all time now? I mean, doesn't really matter.
You can say whatever you want. Worst team.
But just to throw that out there, Corona is half Salvadorian, but just in case anybody didn't know that, so so there's no bias here, man. I just want the best player to play, and if Corona comes in and he's that, then that's great.
What I was going to say is, because I forgot about this, but you give the one up to Seren because of the familiarity with the players around him, but I think I have to give just as much of a one up to Corona because he's got the experience under playing with and under Tab in his system and what he desires to do. And if this is a player in Joe Corona that Tab specifically said he wanted, then you have to trust that that's a player that Tab knows where he wants to play him, how he wants to play him, and it's a player he believes he can get the most out of. That usually means that player is going to be a starter in that system for that coach.
But and we can move past this subject, after this, but you and myself, and I know a lot of people here in the chat, we basically said that, hey, Seren is MVP of Dynamo last season, right? At least one of the top 2 nominees for MVP last season, for his play and everything that he was able to do, and for his grit. I mean, Tab said himself, he showed his professionalism. He showed why he deserves to be on the pitch and all that. Out of all the players that he had, Seren is the one he could always count on. And, and to be honest, in my opinion, other than maybe, I don't know, I can't even, maybe Quintero, obviously, but other than him, Seren was right there as a Dynamo MVP for the team. It's a sorry team, but he was one of our 1 or 2 best players.
I'm going to throw it right back at you, and I'm going to make you kind of regret saying that, because this is the same exact conversation we just had, except now we're talking about the Dynamo specifically instead of talking about the national teams. He was the best player on the worst team. It doesn't matter. He's still on a worst team, right? So, say what you will. Joe Corona was a player on a team that was slightly better than us. Galaxy were better than us. So he was a player on the team that was better than us. So who's to say he's not the better player? We don't know. We just don't. But who knows? What I want to see is where Tab employs Corona specifically and how he lets him play. I just think there's so much freedom right now. Go ahead.
The fact that you and me are discussing this much at this length and we're having this much action on the chat about it is good, because that means that these players are so close to each other that they should be pushing each other to make each other better. So, if their competition against each other is anywhere close to this conversation that we're having, then that's good for the team overall.
Yeah. It's just I think the reasons we have these kinds of discussions are because the quality of the players that we currently have, we know it's middle to lower end of the league, right? And so, with the exception of one or two players in particular. And so anytime we bring a player in, there's always a feeling that this is probably or likely should be an upgrade over an existing player. Because we know, just even as fans, as great as we like and as much as we love these players, we know that these players, from a talent standpoint, from a potential standpoint, are not upper echelon in the league. And Corona is another one of those players. Let's be real. He's not an upper echelon player in the league. But if he comes in and he supplants Seren and he has a great season, or Seren has a great season and Joe Corona never sees the pitch, or Vera has a great season and Corona never sees the pitch, whatever the intent is there, then, it definitely solidifies the quality of players that we've been bringing in. And the reason I'm going this route is because I'm going to talk about this. The quality of players that we're bringing in is not good enough. And you don't have to spend a lot of money to bring in good quality players. What you have to do is you have to spend money smart, and you have to have the time and effort from your front office to find those players and scout those players that are struggling on other teams. It was brought up earlier about a player in Liga MX that is on Cruz Azul that is out of favor with Cruz Azul. Now, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money. That's true for any player, especially one coming from another league. But he's a player that's out of favor, so you could get him cheap. He's a player that would fit what you want to do and how you want to play, and he would be a great acquisition. Are the Dynamo even entertaining that thought? We talked about this a few weeks ago. You brought it up. If the Dynamo aren't even making that phone call, they are failing the fans simply on that. Forget about spending the money. Even if they aren't spending the money, if they're not at least making those phone calls, if Matt Jordan's not at least sending an email or a text message to that general manager or technical director or coach of that club and saying, hey, I'm just curious, is this player even available if we wanted to potentially bring them in? If those things are not happening, then it is incredibly frustrating to me as a fan, because this club needs to be making those phone calls and making those and sending those messages. This club needs to find every possible opportunity. We need to leverage every loophole. And congratulations, Matt Jordan. You did something that everybody was happy with, which is you used a re-entry draft pick on a player that another team had picked in the expansion draft, and you managed to land that player. Great. Now don't stop doing things just because you had one victory or one win. Now you need to go and continue to do that. You need to find those loopholes, those mechanisms in MLS and Major League Soccer's roster regulations and roster rules that let you spend more money without spending more money. You need to find those rules that allow you to acquire players that are out of favor with other teams. Maybe it's through trades, maybe it's through player acquisitions and signings and transfers or free agency or whatever it is. Look, Matt Beasler just went to Austin FC. That's a center back player that you absolutely could have brought into this club that would have made a huge impact, and it would have allowed you to move Kiki Struna to create an opportunity. And he's a player, Matt Beasler, that would be able to link up in the offense too. He has that capability. Those are some of the frustrations I have. But again, I can't say that for sure, but it sure feels like we're not even making those phone calls at this point. Go ahead.
And that's why I said that previous shows. I mean, and just to go back to what you stated before with the Corona signing and the other signings, in my opinion, like, obviously these feel like it might not be fully, but these feel like reclamation projects, because like obviously, they brought in Fafa because of familiarity with Tab, right? But obviously he didn't do really good at FC Dallas. FC Dallas said, here, go take him. If you can do better with him, great. Give us this amount and do it. Obviously, you're bringing a player who didn't have that much success in FC Dallas. Like I said, his goal scoring rate at Philadelphia Union was a goal every 6-7 games. So I mean, it's not really that good, So you're hoping for the fact that he maybe had a really good time training and playing under Tab, that he can bring that back up and find that what do you call it? Lost for words here. Find that oh man, I'm totally brain farted here right now. On that level of match play, I guess. And then the same thing with Corona, obviously, Corona's moved around and all those things, and LA Galaxy didn't see him, necessary for the squad. And Austin FC obviously chose him, but they didn't put up much of a fight to keep him. They probably saw him as just quality depth player or whatever. And then obviously Houston swooped in and got him, and we see this all as a victory, and that's great, But if he doesn't show out and he sucks, then was it really a victory that we stole the player from a rival, but this player ended up sucking? It's just one of those things. And then just to go back on the point that whether or not we're making calls to big clubs around the world to see the availability of certain players or players that are no longer a requirement for those clubs. I said this earlier in previous shows that I feel that they're scared. Like why wouldn't you want to go call since we're invading Argentina, a Boca Junior or a River Plate, or and ask about certain players. Just ask. Like even if you get a player on loan, who cares? You bring a player alone, you bring a player quality, and if you get an option to buy, then great. Like I said, it's one of those things, like the whole thing, like the whole Pavone, LA Galaxy, Boca Juniors thing, right? Pavone obviously showed that he is of quality. He is a really great player and could be a top 10 player in this league easily, right? Obviously, the whole pandemic thing, is kind of messing up the negotiation, how much they're willing to spend for him. But man, dude, if you tell me right now, why aren't the Dynamo going in there and talking to Boca? Hey, you know what? Look, we're going through this process. Be real. I mean, look, we're going through this process. Can we bring? He's familiar with the league. Can we bring him in? Our owner's looking to sell. We don't know what the future is. If we got the money, we want to buy him because we already know that he's established in MLS. We already know that he can play in MLS. We already know what he can do. Because Boca has no room for him. Boca knows that they don't have a spot for Pavone. They have a lot bigger players playing his spot already, and the chances Boca River will cost big money because even European teams are looking. But no, Minnesota United's number 10, Reynoso, came in for $4.5 million. That's not a lot of money.
No.
And look what that guy did for Minnesota United. Almost damn near got into the MLS final by himself, hitting the ball, distributing. I think he had 7 assists and 5 games in the playoffs, plus 3 goals. And then not to mention the numbers he had in the 10 games he played in the regular season. So I mean, we have this thought where, oh man, these players are gonna be expensive because obviously we all know the European clubs are looking at players from Boca, River, Santos in Brazil, and all these other places. But look at LAFC. They've rated Peñarol from Uruguay, which is the biggest club in Uruguay and one of the biggest clubs in South America. They brought in Diego Rossi. They brought in Brian Rodriguez. I mean, that's just the connection with those guys. That's just having the balls to go over there and pick up the phone and call and see, hey, man, we're looking for XYZ player for XYZ position. Who do you have available?
Yeah. Let me put it this way: when you're the nerdy kid in high school, you gotta shoot your shot at every opportunity. I mean, just being real. No offense to the nerds out there. Look, I'm a nerd, bro. Look, it is what it is. But you got to shoot your shot at every opportunity. You can't be afraid of the rejection you're going to get rejected. But you have to take the chance, because it's that one time you don't get rejected going after that person you thought you had no chance with, and you land it.
Change your whole thing.
It can change everything in an instant. It only takes one yes. You may get 30 no's, you may get 100 no's. But if you at least take those 100 chances, you could land one player that can change your entire outlook of your organization. And that's the type of system we're in. That's the type of system we're in, man.
But I don't care about bringing in 5, 6, 7 players at $5 million total, right? If you can bring me one player that I know is a true game changer that lifts the whole level of your club up, like Columbus Crew did with Lucas Celaya, who cost them 5-6 mil from Tigres, like what I mentioned before with Minnesota United and Reynoso bringing them in from Boca for $4.5 million a year. You bring me one player who can raise the level of the entire team. I'd rather do that than you over here buying 7 to 8 players for that same amount that are going to be below average players, who are going to be players who are just going to, you're just hoping that you're going to hit a double. You're hoping that you can hit a single off of these players, and that you hope you find a diamond in the rust. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm hoping you find those diamonds in the rust, but those diamonds in the rust are not many, because there's better scouting departments out there for bigger teams that find them before you do. So, and Figueroa says, I got the guy who fits the bill, but you say that, but would you think Matt Jordan would go out there and make that call for that guy that you're mentioning? He says.
So here's the thing, and maybe this is going to be the thing that people really latch on to, but this is typical Matt Jordan, and the reason I say that is he did the same thing with Montreal. He never swung for the fences with Montreal. They had one player, and it wasn't even the player that he brought in Piatti. But outside of that, he never really went big. He was always a general manager that that made these kind of smaller deals. And I don't know, maybe it's a lack of confidence on Matt Jordan's part. Maybe it's just that he doesn't know how to really start approaching for the big name players, or what it is. But he's never been a guy that's willing to he's never been a guy willing to shoot his shot. I mean, just being real, just being honest. And it's frustrating, because that's the GM that you have. And look, you got something to say it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I hope that Bahamich comes in here and destroys MLS, him being a second division Argentine player. I hope he does. I mean, that would be a diamond in the rough, right? I hope he doesn't. But if he doesn't, would we be surprised? Why? Because we spent $1 million on the transfer fee for a player. $1 million for a player, man. That's chump change, man. Unfortunately, and especially the way MLS is operating now, with all these new clubs coming in, and a lot of people, and you see Atlanta United. They had 1 year hiatus. They're going after this young kid from Ecuador, who is their top prospect, 19-year-old kid, and they're in talks with them alongside Manchester United. And obviously I know that's a whole different situation, because there's more money in Atlanta United, but still, man, like, why is it hard for them to just make the call and ask? Just make the call and ask. Like Sean said, shoot your shot. Hey, look, man, I can ask however many people out, and I can get 99 no's, but if that one person gives me that yes, game changer. So that's all I need. I just need that one yes.
It is interesting too, because ownership does play a little bit of a role in that as well, because Matt Jordan, as I understand it, the way this process works is when Matt Jordan has a player that the club that he feels the club should be interested in, he brings it to the ownership for them to make a decision whether he should even bother. But I feel like that should happen after he's already made the call, after he's already kind of started the process. The problem is if ownership is basically vetoing any chance at going after these players on the possibility that they might be out of their price range, you lose out on those opportunities that maybe you can bring a guy in for $300,000 to $600,000, well within the range that Brenner should be able to afford easily, and a player that has the chance to really make a difference. Now, that's not going to be a Zlatan type of player, don't get me wrong, but there are players out there right now internationally that would love to come and play, in the U.S. for MLS. DeAndre Yedlin is looking to be signed by a team on the East Coast. Probably, my guess is maybe Atlanta, but if not Atlanta, then maybe one of the New York teams. Who knows? But there are players like that out there that are not going to command a huge transfer fee, but are players that can, they can edge you a little bit closer to what you want to be. They don't have to be big name players, but if you're not at least trying, if you're not at least taking those chances, you're never going to end up with what you really want. And that's, I think, where we really are right now.
I would rather ownership tell Matt Jordan, here, Matt Jordan, look, you got $4 million to go do whatever you got to go do, right? If I'm Matt Jordan, I just get that $4 million and go and try to go get the best player possible. That's why you have an academy. That's why you have a U23 squad. That's why you have RGB. Fill in the rest of the spots with those other players. But you get that one true player who can raise the level of the squad to go out there and help you succeed. I'd rather him do that one offseason than him signing a bunch of rejects or a bunch of players who just been let go, or you're using mechanisms as reentry drafts and things of that nature. Because the reason they're reentry drafts is because their club decide not to pick up the contract. Obviously, they're a player that they don't want, or they cost too much to warrant they don't warrant their current salary. So those are the players you're filling up the squad with. I'd rather you just do that. Give me one player, one good player above average.
I just feel like in general, I just feel like we have a situation where the players that are being brought in, you call them reclamation projects. I'm going to call them, the cast-offs, if you will, the misfits that don't quite fit where they already play, or they're, young players that aren't, Bahamich may be the exception to that rule. But they're players that other teams aren't absolutely coveting, right? They're players that we're willing to take because they're cheap and they fill a position of need. But, it's...
I'm sorry, Sean, before you go, even a player like Albert Elise, who might be the best player we ever brought into the club from another league, he was a player who didn't have a spot in Rayados. I don't even think he was a bench player at that time. He was probably playing for the reserve team, if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
And we brought him in, for what, $2 million or whatever, and we even botched that. The thing is, like, when you do hit that diamond in the rough, you got to be able to sell on and keep going, and that's where we are with the whole thing. Like, do you think Cholos was scared to pick up the phone and ask us for our best player in Mauro? Hey, I know he's your best player, but how much?
Yeah, and that conversation by Cholos, that started before the 2020 season. That didn't start, that wasn't just the 2020 season. That started in 2019 when Mauro was on an absolute tear and was one of our top two players on the team easily.
Yeah, we know this guy just scored 25 goals for you overall in all competitions for you, but how much?
Yeah.
They picked up the phone. They weren't scared.
No, you can't be scared. If you want to be... look, what is we talk about identity, we talk about aspirations, we talk about, what's the goal, right? What are you trying to be? Are you trying to be a top MLS club, or are you trying to be a top USL club? Because right now you're operating like a top USL club, top USL championship club. That's where you belong. And I'll be damned if we had pro rel in this country in MLS, we'd be effed because we wouldn't be in MLS. We wouldn't have been in MLS back in 2015 whenever he took over, 2013 whenever he took over. We've been terrible. And, a lot, we can point to it being Brenner, but the fact is we've had the same general manager the entire time as well. So, it probably is something to do with Brenner. And my hope is that if everything that we've heard and everything that I've heard points to, and it is accurate about, this being the year that Brenner is really adamant he's going to sell, then let's hope that who he sells to is somebody who has, the guts to be a strong-willed owner and is willing to, to tell his general manager, you take the chance, because if you don't take the chance, you're gone. And, I just feel like at times Brenner is just because he doesn't know sports business, because he doesn't know, he doesn't know that side of things. He just defers to Matt Jordan in the front office. And the problem with that is you do have to have an owner that at least understands it a little bit, or that is willing to tell his people, I'm willing to spend whatever it takes. And Brenner's not either of those things. And I feel like he has tried to operate this from a business perspective, not a sports business perspective, but a business perspective. And I think that has handcuffed a lot of what could happen. But I think on the flip side, Matt Jordan is the perfect example of why this regime has failed, why this ownership has failed the fans. And that's because, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, Matt Jordan's not shooting his shot. Matt Jordan's not taking those chances.
I'm gonna say something out here that is gonna be far crazy, borderline idiotic, right? So don't mind me for saying this, but last night before I was going to bed, I saw something pop up on my Twitter feed, and it was retweeted by Victor Ariza. For those who don't know, he does Soccer Matters with Glenn Davis and does other things, connected with the Dynamo and things of that nature, right? And he mentioned that one of the presidential candidates for Barcelona says that if he gets elected, obviously we know Barcelona's having presidential elections or whatever, that he wants to go buy an MLS team, and then obviously have a connection and things of that nature. Kind of similar, I guess, to Chivas USA, that whole debacle, but I don't think it would be to that low standard that Chivas did with Chivas USA. But could you only imagine, Sean, if that guy won presidency and they came and purchased the Houston Dynamo, and we had players over here from high quality players, maybe not the highest quality, but a good quality players from La Masia, their academy. We had players from the Houston Dynamo academy going over to Barcelona to train, like FC Dallas and Bayern Munich, how they have that connection going on. Can you only imagine having a owner or a big club like Barcelona giving us funds to come play, funds to spend on players, quality to win MLS Cup, and to win titles in the USA and compete in international competitions and things of that nature? Could you only imagine, Sean? That's my question.
There is an example of that, and Figueroa called it out, Man City, New York City, FC. And frankly, that hasn't been the best situation, right? Patrick Vieira was brought in to be their coach, and they canned him within like 2 years. And that would be my concern about a situation like that, is you'd end up with, and it's true in La Liga. You have the coaching carousel. If you're not succeeding in the first, 2 years you're there, goodbye. And in MLS, they would want to, I can guarantee you, they would want to bring in their coaches so that they would have the opportunity to develop their coaches. And, honestly, the biggest struggle there is you're talking about, yes, your quality would improve, but you're still not going to be a championship team in MLS because there's not enough MLS in the blood, so to speak.
Yeah. Think about other connections, the whole Red Bull connection with our Red Bull Salzburg and Red Bull Leipzig,
Yeah.
That whole thing is working out.
Yeah.
The New York FC.
I was going to say, look at FC Dallas and Bayern Munich. They've got an agreement and they're partners in development. And frankly, that has yielded so much benefit. There are 4 FC Dallas youth players specifically that are homegrowns that are headed to go and train with Bayern Munich in the offseason. I mean, that is mind blowing to me.
You know what that causes? That causes players like Brian Reynolds, which is their left back that replaced the right back, that replaced Reggie Cannon, to be valued at $10 million. And then you know what you can do with those $10 million? Buy players. Quality.
You can buy 2 or 3 players. You are exactly. Absolutely right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, you got all these different situations, and it's not just the fact of, having the name brand of Barcelona, above us or whatever or anything like that. It's just having owners that are willing to invest in the club and on the pitch and to be able to compete in this league the way we're supposed to. It's funny because I remember Don Garber in an interview or in an article said something about, Houston is such a large market and needing Houston to be a lot more successful than what it is. Even though historically, Dynamo are one of the historical clubs in MLS, right? But the last 7 years have faded that away so quickly. I mean, dude, like the two titles in the 4 finals, that seems like eons ago.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're talking to me about Houston Dynamo 1960s, you know? Like that seems like so far ago. But like, man, it's crazy, man. Like, you know, and that's what I'm saying. These connections and these having these sister clubs or whatever. That's the way to go. Unfortunately, you know, unless you just find somebody who really has money and really loves the sport of soccer and understands it and is willing to invest, or put people in the position to make the club successful. You know, and unfortunately, I don't see that from anybody locally. You know, and then if you bring somebody from the outside that buys it, there's always the possibility of having the fear of the club moving or whatever, things of that nature. But you know,
so like, I'm gonna stop you. There is one person, absolutely comes down to a single person right now in Houston, or the greater Houston area, if you will, that could buy this team, has enough money to do it, no questions asked, has the deep enough pockets to be that kind of owner, has connections internationally, part owner of Roma, and that is Dan Friedkin. And you know, he is an individual that when the Dynamo when the majority ownership was available and AEG were talking about wanting to sell, he was someone that came up in those conversations. He inquired. He is someone that is interested, and he wants to own an MLS, you know, wants to be part owner or own an MLS club. Look, there is no better opportunity for that individual than the Dynamo. And the reason I say that is you get to come in and be the savior. Spend a little bit of money and bring in that big name player. You're going to sell that stadium out. I guarantee you're going to sell BBVA out the first season he's here, just from simply bringing in one player.
Look, he has big plans for Roma, right? The brand new stadium, they're focusing on it. They're trying to finish up whole rebrand over there as far as like logos and everything and all this stuff. And right now Roma are doing really well in Serie A. I would not mind a Roma Dynamo partnership if Dan decided to come by, you know, over here, his local team over here in the States. I would not mind that at all. But again, that's what I'm saying. There would be a connection. The Dynamo would basically be a sister club to Roma, you know? And that's fine. That's fine. I have no problems with that. We need the recognition worldwide. The thing is, like, the Dynamo are known in Honduras. You know, are known in Honduras, which is great. You know, we've got some great Honduran players, Boniek, you know, Elise, you know,
Alexander Lopez,
you know, things of that nature. Minor Figueroa, but you can only go as far as your, you know, as Honduras has gone, you know, and unfortunately it hasn't been that far. You know, we need to be known a little bit more worldwide, or at least a little bit more in our region, you know, a little bit known more in South America. Like, you know, do they know about the Dynamo in Uruguay? Do they know about the Dynamo in Colombia? Do they know about the Dynamo in Chile? You know, like, what's going on? You know, like are we represented down there? You know, is there anything, you know, out there that, you know, lets them know that we exist? You know, because obviously Inter Miami has the whole Beckham effect. LA Galaxy is the LA effect, as the Beckham effect as well, the Zlatan effect, all that stuff. LAFC with Carlos Vela and all the stuff that's going on over there, and all the youthful players that are playing internationally for Uruguay and Ecuador and all that stuff. Like, all these other clubs have recognition. Portland Timbers has recognition. Portland, man. Portland
Columbus.
Portland is like a sixth of the size of Houston. Columbus,
but to give Portland credit, they've been doing this for a long time. Portland has been a soccer town for a long time.
For sure. But what I'm saying is, like, if you're a player and you're deciding about where you want to live and want to move your family, you think about it. A soccer player, mid-20s, you know, mid to late 20s or whatever. You want to live in Portland? Do you want to live in Houston? Like, you know, it's we have stuff to show off of. You know, Houston is a international city. You know, there's a lot of communities in Houston. Asian communities, South American communities, Central American communities, European communities, all over this place. that anybody who comes into this team can adapt to easily. But we're not shooting our shots.
Yeah, and I mean that's what it comes down to. And as a fan, if you think about it and you see these other clubs, and look, they're not landing the best players in the world. Nobody's landed Lionel Messi. Nobody's landed Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah, Galaxy got Zlatan Ibrahimovic on his way out. Yes, that you do see clubs that have that happen, but what has LA Galaxy been since? Nothing. You don't have to go and sign the biggest name player out there, but you need to sign somebody, and it needs to be somebody with some clout, somebody that's going to have some pull. And look, I've never been an advocate for big name players per se, because the expense of that in terms of the budget usually doesn't pan out very well. But you have to at least spend smartly enough that you can find your Zelarayan or your Polito or your Reynoso or Reynosa or whoever it is. You have to be willing to at least spend that much to find that player. And look, Darwin Quintero, for as good as he is, he's not that player. He's a look, he's a guy that's aging very rapidly, and he's not the best player per se at his position. He's still decent. But he's not a world beater. He's not even an MLS beater at that position. He's one of the better players in MLS at that position, but he's not the best. And we don't have anybody at any single position on our team that I would consider the best at their position. And
it's funny.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sean. It's funny. I see all these lists, top 25, under 25, top 10 players in the league, top something, whatever of the league, top this, top that. I never, and I very fewly see a Dynamo player on those lists.
Yeah, and if they are, it's like they're the very last player.
Yeah, and it's very sad, and I'm not, and look, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about signing big players. I'm talking about signing players that lift the quality of the team to where you expand your recognition on the pitch. Because if you're winning MLS Cups, your U.S. Open Cups, you're going to international competitions against teams that normally don't get to see you play because you're out of country league, right?
Yeah.
And then they need to know about you, and and that's great. Brand recognition. I don't look, if I wasn't from Houston, if I wasn't from the United States, would I really care about the Houston Dynamo?
I'll be honest, I wouldn't even know who they were.
I highly doubt it. That's like you telling me. That's like you telling me to know some fourth division club in Germany that's located 60 miles south of Munich. I have no idea who you're talking about. Like that's the same way these people feel all over the world. You want me to care about a soccer club in Houston, Texas? What reason? What have they done? They haven't done anything. Yeah, they haven't brought anything to the table. You know why people care so much about they or not very care but know so much about LA Galaxy and it's because they've appeared in international competitions. They might have sucked in them, but they've been there. Name brand recognition. They brought in players, things of that nature. They're willing to do what needs to be done to show them, and obviously MLS has helped push them and be that, I guess, one of those premier franchises. But even like a team like Seattle Sounders, you're talking about Seattle. I mean, Seattle compared to Houston, they're not. Houston is a more worldwide known city than Seattle is. But if we're talking about soccer clubs, the Sounders are 10, 20, 30 times more known as a club than the Dynamo, for sure. I'm sure. So that's all I got.
Yeah, no, definitely have to agree with you on that without a doubt, for sure. And we're kind of going around and around and around about it, but the reality is, if 2020 is the year that Brenner sells his stake, his ownership
21.
stake, 2021, you're right. Sorry, we're in 21 now. 2021, thank you. If 2021 is the year, then 2022 is looking up, and it doesn't take a super rich owner. We don't have to have an Arthur Blank. We just don't. But we need somebody who at least has the capability and the knowledge or the understanding to say, look, I know I don't know about this. I have to leave you in charge of doing it. And I don't want to be the last person to have to sign off on things. And I feel like if Brenner is the one, or if the ownership group is the one that basically has final approval on things, then let's say that Matt Jordan has been making those phone calls, we just don't hear about it. And when Brenner and company are talking about it, they kind of veto it, then that is an owner that just frankly is never going to prosper. It's an owner that's just not going to work out. And I can't say which of those two we are, if it's just ownership, not being good enough, or general manager not being good enough, or some combination of the two. My expectation is some combination of the two. But if Brenner is definitely out, or if we find out sometime in the middle of 2021 that Brenner has sold his stake, then fans should take that as a sign that the club should improve in 2022, 2023, 2024, etc. Now, again, this season may be kind of a bit of a downer. This season, as bad as last season was, this season may be a little bit more of the same. We may not see big signings this season, and we want them. We know we need them. And I say big signings. I'm not talking about a Messi. I'm just talking about players that give you the opportunity to push for a championship. That's actually a really good point. Seattle Sounders dynasty in American soccer are the equivalent to the New England Patriots dynasty in American football. I can't argue that, really. To be honest, Seattle have staked their claim as the best team in the Pacific Northwest, and that is a very strong area of the country for soccer, and Seattle have dominated it effectively. Now Portland's pretty good, but Portland have not kept up with Seattle, and Seattle's not out there spending gob tons of money. They're just spending smartly. They're finding the right coach, and they're continuing to develop youth year over year over year. Their academy system is as good as Dallas's academy system is, if not better. They're just doing it differently, and they're not necessarily selling all of their players for $10 million, but they're creating opportunities for their players on their senior team. Go ahead.
The thing is, I bet you people in Peru know about Seattle Sounders because of Rui Rios.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet that, because of Lodero.
Because of Lodero.
Yep.
So that these players are international players who play for big programs worldwide, as far as international competitions.
Yep.
So when you have young players from Peru, young players from Uruguay, I wouldn't be surprised if this little young boy running around with a Seattle number 10 jersey in Uruguay with Nicolas Lodero on the back, or a little kid in Peru running around with a number 9 Seattle Sounders jersey with a Roy Diaz in the back.
Yeah.
It's just what it is, man. I mean, these players, they might not be the best players of Uruguay or Peru respectively, but they're top players enough to where they're in their senior squads for when it comes to World Cups, World Cup qualifying, Copa Americas, things of that nature. So that's the only thing I'm saying. I'm not look. If we get somebody from Colombia, I'm not expecting you to go sign James Rodriguez. I'm not expecting you to go sign, whoever else, Yerry Mina to fix the defense. But what would have been nice is when we had the chance to sign Quintero that one time a couple of years back, who was a French player for Colombia. That would have been nice, and then he went on to do what he did at River Plate and win that Copa Libertadores with those guys. And obviously his value skyrocketed to a whole point where we can afford it. And then his career has kind of downward spiral since there. But it would have been nice to have been able to have signed a player of that quality at that time. I was happy with the fact that we were even linked to him. Surprisingly, like that's what I'm saying. You have to do what you have to do to make your brand recognized in this world. Soccer is a worldwide sport. It's not just like football, NFL, where you just care what the American audience thinks about you. No, football is a worldwide game that is that you want to catch the attention of the world. basketball. Think about basketball. The NBA does not care about the. I mean, the NBA cares about the money here in America, but the NBA focuses so much on China, so much on the European fans. That's why you see all these big stars go out there and do their camps out there. That's why they do their exhibition matches in China or Mexico or wherever in Europe. Because they know that they're a worldwide sport now. So that's why people in Poland know who the hell LeBron James is.
It's all the more frustrating when you think back just a couple of seasons ago when we had made CCL because we won Open Cup, and the opportunity was there, knowing full well that you were going to be on an international stage in an international competition, to just sign one player that would help drive that recognition a little bit more. And it could have been somebody, it could have been a Guatemalan because we played in Guatemala. It could have been a Liga MX player because we played in Mexico. We played against Tigres. We played against Gignac, and he's a player who's available right now. But the fact is, there were opportunities to drive that recognition, and we sat back and we said, no, that's not how we want to go about this.
And think about
that's what frustrates me the most.
Yeah, for sure. And think about it. We didn't even lose that Valley to Tigres. I think we lost on a 2-0 aggregate, if I remember correctly. So think about it, man. If you would have signed that one player for that offseason because you knew you were going to go into international competitions and you were going to have a lot more eyes on you as a squad, you might have been Tigres and moved on. Like I want to hear the day when I'm talking about when we're talking about the Dynamo competing in the CCL final. I was happy for LAFC. I was happy for Montreal Impact or Toronto FC the last couple of years ago. You want to root for MLS, but realistically, I don't want to root for MLS on the CCL. I want to root for the Dynamo to win the CCL.
Yep.
I mean, it's all great, the whole MLS versus Liga MX thing, but nah, man, I'm not for that. I want to root for the Dynamo. That's a club that I decided to pick to ride with, and that's a club that I want winning the competitions. And I think we're getting close to closing time, like they say. Sean, I know we kind of went on for a while with this, the whole thing. It's kind of sad, really, because I know sometimes in the show it can be repetitive. Sometimes that how we always fall back talking about the ownership and the lack of moves that the general manager is able to do or does do. And it's a shame that we kind of have repetitive shows like that sometimes. But it's the big elephant in the room, and unfortunately that is what it is. And it is what it is. So, and Sean, anything else? Any last words before we head out?
No, I mean, no, I really don't. I think we've kind of said it all tonight, and we're frustrated, and I hope that's come across this show. We are frustrated. I know sometimes it's hard to tell just how frustrated we are, but right now we are frustrated too, and we're frustrated with the front office. We're frustrated with ownership, and look, we have what we have right now in terms of players and the roster that we have. And if no moves are made, we're still going to support. We're still going to cheer. We're still going to, root for those players. But at the end of the day, this ownership and this management have to do better. And, proof is in the pudding. We'll see. But at the very least, I continue to say that this is the year that I believe Brenner is going to sell his stake in the team. And if that is the case, then I feel much better going into the season after this one. Overall. But again, there's still a lot of time to go until that, and a lot of things can happen. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned.
True. Well, guys, that's gonna be it for us today. Thank you for joining us. Like you always do. Remember to please subscribe to the show. Follow us on Twitch now. We made the move over to Twitch. I know we used to be on YouTube, but later on the show will be on YouTube. Make sure to check it out. On YouTube as well if you get that opportunity. Give us a like, a thumbs up over there as well. We always appreciate that kind of support. But other than that, Sean, I mean, hey man, it was great to be back. Hopefully for a better 2021 overall. Personally, soccer wise and just worldwide. You know, hopefully to a better 2021 than what it was for 2020. So hold it down, guys.
Hold it down.